Coming up on this episode, the wait continues for the Golden State Warriors to do absolutely anything in free agency. But in the meantime, I'll deliver some Summer League takeaways, the latest on Al Horford and a few other prospective free agents, plus a forgotten Warrior young player who we shouldn't discredit as a potential starter entering next season. Welcome back to the Golden State with Mates podcast. We are now over 2 weeks into free agency, and the Golden State Warriors remain still the only team not to have made a single move in the period today. The wait continues, but I thought I'd jump on anyway. Summer League is continuing here, got a few takeaways, and obviously there's still plenty of speculation flying about in regard to the Warriors and what they could do with Jonathan Kuminga and what may happen thereafter in terms of potential free agency signings. I wanted to start with Summer League because the Warriors did get a kind of much needed win as far as Summer League games go yesterday. They'd lost 3 on the bounce, including their first one in Las Vegas was terrible against the Portland Trail Blazers. They lost by like 33 or whatever it was. An absolutely disastrous performance there, but a much improved performance against the who'd they play yesterday? The Utah Jazz. They won 103-93, and in particular, a much improved performance from Alex Toohey, which was great to see because I didn't really want to come on and just absolutely bash the guy for what was an absolutely horrific first 2 games in a Warrior jersey dating back to the last game of the California Classic. Alex Toohey was a minus 81 in his first 2 games. I didn't even think that was possible in 2 straight Summer League games. I didn't even think... I think I could go out there and probably be not as bad as a minus 81. So to record that kind of plus minus in 2 straight games is flat out extraordinary. Like, I didn't even think he could possibly do that. He was also 3 of 14 shooting from the floor, and there was a lot of pessimism among Warrior fans in terms of Alex Toohey and, of course, the front office's decision to trade down from the 41st overall pick, where they could have had Kobe Bryant, who had a massive first-up game and was, I think, pretty good in his second game as well with the Phoenix Suns. So it was great to see Alex Toohey finally bounce back, have a breakout Summer League performance of sorts. It wasn't a spectacular game by any means, but he was probably the biggest positive from yesterday's game. And I just love the fact, like, he built some confidence quite evidently, and he was really aggressive. And I think that's what was lacking in his game over the first 2 appearances, was he just seemed to be not doing enough out there, it must be said. Like, he just didn't seem confident. Wasn't moving in a way that would suggest a guy who was comfortable at the level at this point. And I think we saw that, and I think that was mostly shown in his head-to-head battle with Kyle Filipowski, which was really intriguing to watch. Added a storyline to Summer League, which we don't usually get, where those 2 guys are really going at it. And I'm a big Kyle Filipowski fan. Like, I think that guy is really good. And so for Alex Toohey to take it up to him and flat out own him on 3 straight possessions, you would say, to end the first half was great to see. He had one where he snatched a rebound, dribbled up the floor in transition, kind of turned Filipowski in and out a couple of times, and then drew a foul at the rim, made both free throws. Then the next one, he kind of posted up Filipowski and had this beautiful spin move for a layup. And then the possession after that as well, I think he cut to the rim and drew another foul from Filipowski when he made another 2 free throws, which was basically 6 straight points in like 60, 70 seconds or something like that. And I don't think Kyle was too happy with that, because we had the play at the end of the first half where the ball went up from a Jazz 3-pointer and they battled under the rim and kind of got tangled up, and they had to go and review it. And clearly there was a bit of angst there and back and forth between Toohey and Filipowski, which was, again, great to see. And I think that physicality and the aggression and the confidence was really starting to show with Toohey by the end of that first half. He came out in the second half, had a corner 3, which he only shot 1 of 4 yesterday. So it wasn't like it was great. He was 4 of 11 from the floor overall. So it wasn't like he was spectacularly efficient, but the 3-pointer actually, correct me if I'm wrong, but the 3-pointer actually looks okay to me, like the form. It looks okay. And he had that circus layup as well, where it was kind of a loose ball. He grabbed it, had a circus layup and one as well. So he finished with 15 points, 5 rebounds, a couple of assists. A steal, was a plus 10 in the game, which again, was good to see after being a minus 81 in his first two. So I really like the performance. It's good to be able to come on here and talk positively about that, because even as an Australian, like, I have an inherent bias already. Like, I want these guys to succeed in terms of Alex and Taron Armstrong. Like, as an Australian, I really want that badly. But even as an Australian, I couldn't have come onto this podcast and spoken anything positively about Alex Toohey through the first two games. Like, I couldn't have, like, I've seen Australians on social media and they were trying to defend his performances and saying his defense was good and stuff like that. I'm just like, cut the BS. Cut the BS. Like, he was goddamn awful the first two games. He just was. And it's nice to be able to come back after his third game, a bounce back performance, and talk positively, because I thought that was a really good performance. The interesting thing to me is, what's his strength in the NBA to me? Is his strength, because I think a lot of these summer league, it's like, all right, we're trying to pinpoint why these guys are going to be good in the league and can be good for a long time. And the question mark to me is, what makes him an NBA player? Because I don't think there's one specific skill where you would look at and say that's what's going to keep him in the league for a long time as a late second round pick. However, maybe it's simply the fact that he's kind of can do a bit of everything, that he's pretty versatile. And maybe it's just that versatility. It's the versatility that's the thing that, particularly in the Warriors system, could make him a long-term player. But there's a long way to go. Obviously, it was great to see a positive performance yesterday, though. Will Richard, I didn't think he impacted the game. He finished with 10 points, and I think he had 3 steals. Probably didn't impact the game as much as what I would have liked. And the three-point shooting continues to be a concern. I think he was 35, 36% in college last season, but he's now 3 of 19 through, what has he played? I think he's played 4 summer league games now, again, going back to the California Classic. So he's 3 of 19. That's not great, obviously. The defense, I think, is okay. I still think he could play a role for the Warriors as early as next season, probably on a 2-way contract. In fact, I'm assuming these 2-way guys are going to be Toohey, Richard, and Armstrong. At least that's what I'm hoping for at this point. And look, they could all potentially play a role for the Warriors next season in spots where there's injuries and in spots where you're resting guys on key nights. I don't think there's any of these guys are necessarily going to be part of a fully healthy rotation, or at least I don't think they should be for a team that still has aspirations of making a deep playoff run. But you can see in Richard, and even Toohey, you can see why the Warriors liked them and why they drafted them, late in the second round. And then when it comes to Taron Armstrong, obviously he's from my home state. In fact, even more than Toohey, I have a hope of Taron Armstrong becoming a legitimate NBA player for the Warriors. He's solid, is what I would say. Again, I can't, even as a fellow Tasmanian, I can't come out and say Taron Armstrong is, doing spectacular things and is really pushing his case to be, on the Golden State main roster on a standard contract or anything like that. He's just solid, and maybe that's enough. And it's almost enough to the point where, you could probably throw him out there in an NBA game for 5 minutes next season, and he's not going to make any of these, huge mistakes or anything like that. But the really interesting thing to me, and I read about Jay Billis's kind of report on his comments were on NBC Sports Bay Area website, whatever. I think he spoke with Monty Poole or whatever. And Jay Billis labelled Alex Toohey a high upside pick from the Warriors. And obviously, Jay Billis knows more than me, but I'm looking at this and I'm thinking, is he though? Is Alex Toohey a high upside pick? And it's the same with kind of Taron Armstrong and any of these Australian guys, which I follow closely, and they're not blessed with great athleticism by any means, although Toohey's got really good size, but they're not blessed with great athleticism, and they're not great shooters either. And so if you're not a great shooter and you don't have great athleticism, where's the star potential? Where's the star potential? If you're not a huge time shot maker and shooter and you're not blessed with athleticism, where's the high upside? Now, I can see these guys becoming potential role players in the future, absolutely, but I'm not sure about the high upside nature of Toohey or the high upside nature of Taron Armstrong for that matter. Now, Taron had a couple of really nice drives and finishes late in the game in the fourth quarter yesterday, I think. But again, like he's just solid. Like he's not blowing you away. Like 9.7 rebounds, 3 assists. He sets the table for his teammates really well. Again, the assist to turnover ratio is generally pretty good, although he had a few turnovers yesterday. Thought he got better as the game went on. First half, he had once or twice got picked kind of at half court as the Jazz were really putting some pressure on, which it's really interesting to me because you're looking at summer league and a lot of these guys are just trying to stand out and push their case for roles in the NBA. And again, if you're guys like Alex Toohey and Taron Armstrong, who I think are more so potential role players for you down the track, then we know like role players are going to be better when they're playing around star level players. And that's why I think it's difficult for these guys to necessarily stand out in a huge way in summer league as guys. Like they're not guys that are going to go get 20, 25 points for you. Like they're not absolute bucket getters. But again, if they're going to be role players, I can see why Golden State would be interested in them and are investing in them, because I think their high IQ, their ability to pass the ball, their ability to have, pretty versatile skill sets, not make horrific mistakes or anything like that. Like I can see why the Warriors are interested in that and why they think that, hey, once they start playing with legitimately experienced veteran players, they could actually carve out roles here. Again, they're not going to be superstars, right? I think if you're thinking that Alex Toohey is going to come in as the 52nd overall pick and suddenly turn into, I don't know, Luka Doncic or something, or let's say Nikola Jokic is a 41st pick in the second round. Like, I don't think that's going to be Alex Toohey. And I don't think Taron Armstrong is necessarily going to be this starting caliber point guard for you either. But that doesn't mean they can't have long careers, as, Tui could be, at the absolute best, maybe a fourth or fifth starter for you, right? In that role player category. Maybe Taron Armstrong can have a long career as a backup point guard, right? But again, these Australian guys that come over, and again, I watch them closely. And if you're not a great athlete and you're not a great shooter, where's the upside? It's exactly why I'm probably lower on Josh Giddey than most Australians are. Like I have conversations all the time because Josh Giddey, I suppose, is the biggest name Australian right now, given Ben Simmons has crapped the bed and his career's spiraled. Josh Giddey is now the biggest name Australian in the NBA. And I have chats all the time with, more casual basketball fans in Australia who don't necessarily follow it on a daily basis or anything like that. And they're so high on Josh Giddey and they love Josh Giddey and what he's doing and stuff like that. And the fact that he's going to make, a big contract here with the Bulls and whatever else. And I kind of always try and cool it down a little bit and say, yeah, like he's good, but he needs the ball in his hands to be effective. And if Josh Giddey's one of your main guys, where's that ultimately taking you when, again, he's not a great athlete. He's not a great shot maker, although I think we saw some improvements in that area. Same with the shooting. So where's it actually taking you as an NBA franchise if he's your first or second guy? And so I could completely understand why the Chicago Bulls are saying right now, we're not giving you $30 million a year. If you can go and get that from someone else, then yeah, sure, we'll match it and bring you back. But if no one else is offering you that, why do we have to give you $30 million a year when we could just try and get you for $20 million a year, which is exactly the same as the Warriors situation with Kuminga. It's like, Kuminga might want this much, but if the Warriors, the Warriors probably saying, we'll go and get that from someone else. And then if you do get an offer sheet, then sure, we might match it, or we'll try, we'll try and work something out. But in the meantime, like, why would we give you $25 million a year when there's no one else offering that? So I don't know, a fascinating scenario with some of those restricted free agents. But again, on Toohey and Armstrong, solid performance. Toohey was really good yesterday. Armstrong, solid again. I think they're guys in the long term that are going to be better when they've got more talent. Particularly like Armstrong with some of these assist numbers is, he could have nearly double-digit assists each of these games if his teammates could actually make shots. Right. So, I don't know. We'll wait and see what happens with those guys. But I think all three of them, hopefully on two-way deals. I don't think either of them, like any of them, are standing out enough for me to say that guy should be on the main roster. Potentially, like if you want a 15th roster spot, like I think the Warriors will go into next season with 14. If you wanted to add a 15th and have like Richard on a main spot as the 15th guy, fine. But I'm not sure they should be one of your 14. right? So again, we'll wait and see. Just in terms of some of the free agency stuff here, not too much on Kuminga. I'll talk a bit more about him in a second. The Horford update today was really interesting. Mark Spears on NBA Today basically said something to the contrary to what I and most Golden State fans believed here over the last few days. Spears said that the Warriors were hoping that Horford would sign last week, and he didn't, and went on to mention, I think, the Lakers, the Bucks, and the Hawks as potential options for Horford. And obviously the thought of retirement is still alive as well, although I would consider that unlikely, but we'll wait and see. So I think most of us, including myself, were pretty comfortable or confident in the knowledge that, hey, Horford will sign. It's just that he can't officially sign or anything like that until the Kuminga situation is resolved. Well, by Spears' comments, it sounds like the Kuminga situation doesn't have any involvement in it, and the Warriors were hoping that he would sign last week. Now, I don't know. I don't want to discredit Spears because he's an insider. He knows a lot more than me. But to me, I still think there's a hope here that, hey, this has still got to do with the Kuminga situation because it just makes sense. Like, it just makes sense that the Warriors want to know what they're doing with Kuminga, what money they have left over, what their financial situation is, what their roster, position is once the Kuminga thing is sorted. And that's when they'll make signings after that. Like, I think that makes a lot of sense. And so to me, to hear this from Spears, I think went to the contrary on what we believed. And I'm not completely ruling out the fact. In fact, I still believe that the Horford thing is determined on what happens with Kuminga. And until he signs with a different team and the Warriors kind of may have dropped the ball a bit, then that's what I think I'll continue to believe. But, despite Spears' comments, and his colleague Tim McMahon had something more of a balanced, positive view from a Golden State perspective, where he said, I'd tell Warrior fans to relax a little bit on that one until he signs somewhere else or until he announces his retirement. I think the assumption is that Al Horford will still land with the Warriors. Just in terms of, I suppose, rounding out this roster where, again, there's still only 9 guys contracted. I've kind of put a list together here that I think we'll see probably at least 3, if not 4 guys come from this list of 9 players that I've got. So here are the guys that I've got that I'm mentioning. Horford, D'Anthony Melton, which are the big 2 that we think are most likely going to come. Bradley Beal, Damian Lillard, Ben Simmons, Seth Curry, Chris Boucher, Trey Lyles, Gary Payton II. I would think of that group of 9 players, the Warriors will sign at least 3, if not 4, right? And we had guys like, I know Brett Siegel of Clutch Points reported over the weekend that Simmons and Seth Curry had come up in conversations with in regard to the Warriors and free agency. I tweeted out the other day, I've actually been watching some Ben Simmons stuff from last season, which is, we're getting to a pretty dire point of the offseason when I'm trying to talk myself into Ben Simmons and even watching film of Ben Simmons from last season. And the more I think about it, the more I can talk myself into it. 1, from an Australian perspective, obviously, with Ben being Australian, but 2, the Warriors could do with kind of lessening the burden on Draymond Green, right? And having another watered down version of him, I suppose, could be helpful. And the Warriors also need a backup point guard. And Ben Simmons, was a 3-time All-Star. Yes, it's going back a bit now, as a point guard. He's a legitimate point guard. Now, I know he played kind of backup center minutes for the Clippers last season, but for the Warriors, he could legitimately be a backup version of Draymond and also a backup version of Steph. Now, he's not Steph because Steph's the greatest shooter of all time and Ben Simmons doesn't even look at the rim anymore. So they're very different. But in terms of the ball handling and the playmaking, Ben Simmons can still provide that. He's 6'10". Obviously, you'd have to try and cater lineups around him, and I don't think you'd ever be able to get away with him and Draymond together. Maybe you could get away. Maybe you could get away with both, so long as the other 3 are excellent shooters. Like if you had Steph also on the floor with Buddy Hield and Moses, for example, Moses Moody, something like that. I'm not sure we'd see that too much, but I'm talking myself into Ben Simmons a little bit, and I actually think if I had to choose between Ben and Seth Curry for the last roster spot, I think I'd choose Ben because I look at the shooting guard situation right now, and the Warriors are pretty stacked in terms of guards. Like if you think about what they've got currently in terms of just the backcourt, they've obviously got Steph, Pods, Buddy Hield. Moses can still kind of play that role to a degree. Will Richard, they've just drafted. Then you've got Melton most likely coming in. Then they're certainly interested in Beal, right? They're going to have some interest in Dame, albeit that's further down the track after the All-Star break when he comes back kind of thing, if that were to happen. So then you've got potentially like GP2 and Pat Spencer have both been around the Summer League squad. So that would tell me that they've got some interest in bringing GP2 back. And so I'm looking at all these options and I'm thinking, okay, where does Seth Curry fit into that? Now, he is still an absolutely elite three-point shooter, but are you going to play him over Buddy Hield? Are you going to play him over Brandon Podziemski? Are you going to play him over Moses Moody? Like, I just don't see, like, he's an absolute situational player to me where you really, one possession, you want to put your best shooters out on the floor or something like that. I'm not sure he's an actual part of the rotation. And even as an insurance measure, if some of these guys get injured, I think he's still down the pecking order. As Ben, to me, like the Warriors could still do with size and ball handling and defense. And I think that's what Ben Simmons provides, even though he's got a number of other flaws. So if I was to pick between those two for a roster spot, I'd go Ben Simmons over Seth Curry. But let me know, obviously, the Steph ties, being his brother, that comes into it as well. I mean, in terms of just from an on-court standpoint, I think I'd prefer Ben Simmons over Seth Curry. I might prefer going neither and going with a Trey Lyles or something like that, just for that size and shooting. Obviously, Horford, Melton, and Beal are probably the three main ones right now in terms of guys who've got to monitor with the Warriors. Clearly, Beal is more likely to go to the Clippers, you'd think, at this stage. We're still waiting around to see what happens with him and his buyout situation that hasn't been forthcoming at this point. I just think that I wouldn't completely rule it out. I'm not ruling out Bradley Beal coming to the Warriors. I'm not ruling that out until that, the moment he signs with the Clippers, I suppose, or it's reported that he will. Just in terms of the Kuminga situation, right now, as we continue to wait, reports are that he's met with the Warriors already in Vegas, meeting with some other teams, whatever. I'm hoping this situation could be resolved sooner rather than later, but it could drag on even further than this. I just a couple of quick comments on this. A lot of Warrior fans, I think, are going to be a little bit nervous or a bit anxious that the Warriors could be stuck with Kuminga's contract if they re-sign him, and that they would then have to include assets to get off him in the future. I just don't see that being the case, right? I don't see the Warriors bringing Kuminga back on a number that's that high that they would then be stuck. I think if they bring him back, they're going to try their best to do it on a deal that ensures that, hey, this won't turn into some albatross ugly contract that we then can't move, right? I think it'll be at a number where they're comfortable that it will be movable. And I think we've also got to realize that the state of the off season is much different to the state of, things in, during the season when games are actually taking place. And yes, we might look around now and there might not be that many trade options available, but come mid-season when some teams are absolutely, going to crap basically, and, some players might be wanting out and all these different situations are taking place, I think that then would present plenty of opportunities for the Warriors to be able to move Kuminga quite easily. Like, I'm already looking at the Andrew Wiggins situation in Miami, and there's been reports that they're keen on keeping Wiggins throughout this offseason, starting next season with him and seeing how things go with him and Tyler Hero and Bam, and obviously bringing in Norman Powell as well. Well, if that kind of goes sideways and Miami are just a middling to suckish team early next season, and they think that, hey, there's still the potential in Kuminga here, then I can see a Kuminga for Wiggins swap, Kuminga and something for Wiggins swap that could take place. Like, I could see that rather easily. And I think there's other teams where, like, if the Pelicans were to go sideways, maybe something could happen. Like, there's, the Kings again, right? Like, I think there's just so many different scenarios and so many different teams that you can look at and say, I could see at least one, if not multiple of these teams, things going sideways or downhill for them next season to a point where they would have assets that they either want to move or that asset wants to move themselves, that could create an opportunity for the Warriors to move on from Kuminga in a way that we don't necessarily know the specifics of right now. Like I'm not looking at specific situation, or I suppose I just did with the Wiggins one, but that's not happening right now. Could that happen when Kuminga becomes trade eligible in January, February? Yes. Like I think there's going to be scenarios available to the Warriors. So I'm not riddled with angst or concern about the Warriors bringing Kuminga back and then being stuck with his contract. I'm just not. And right now, like I'm okay with Kuminga coming back on a reasonable deal that is rather team friendly. Like if it's $25 to $30 million a year, then sure, that's going to be a problem potentially. But I think it's more likely to be in that, 18 to $22 million a year mark, I believe. So again, we'll wait and see on that. Just the one thing I did want to mention in terms of the Kuminga contract that's really interesting to me and hasn't really been brought up is the Warriors are clearly gearing up here for the 2027 offseason, right? Where Steph, Jimmy, and Draymond are obviously contracted for each of the next 2 years. I think at that point, Steve Kerr's got 1 year left on his contract. We'll wait and see what happens, middle of next season or after next season, whatever else. So I think the Warriors are clearly looking at this 2-year timeline, and then resetting themselves for, in 2027, where Steph, will hopefully continue with the Warriors, but it might be on less than the max, potentially, depending on what else the Warriors could do in free agency. We'll see where Draymond's at that time. Same with Jimmy. Like it'll kind of be it's a 2-year period, and then it's a wait and see. And I think the Warriors are leaving themselves with plenty of flexibility, as are other teams. You look at the Clippers, you look at the Lakers. There's going to be plenty of free agents looking like they're going to be available in that period. Let's kind of leave ourselves open. Let's push for the next 2 years, but then leave ourselves open to see what happens come that 2027 offseason. Right now, the Warriors only have Moses Moody, who's at $13.4 million for that next season, and Buddy Hield, who's $10.1 million, I think, for that 2027-28 season. They're the only two guys contracted, so that's about $23 million, and even the Buddy Hield money isn't guaranteed, I don't think. So it's $23 million on the books beyond the 2027 offseason. And so how does that play into the Kuminga situation? Do the Warriors say, we only want a 2-year contract here and then maybe a 3rd-year team option? I don't think Kuminga's camp's going to go for that one, but maybe it's a 3rd-year player option. I think the Warriors might be a little bit nervous about adding extra money on that 27 into that 27-28 year, because that then takes away from their flexibility to potentially make big moves in that 2027 offseason in free agency. So that's kind of a little wrinkle to this. Like, I'm not saying it's a huge element that's going to be a massive factor in this Kuminga situation, but I still think it would be a little bit of an element that the front office would be looking at here. No doubt about that. Just in terms of Kuminga as well, to finish up here on him, I know Zach Lowe talked about it on his show earlier in regard to the kind of numbers that Kuminga has put up when he's got significant playing time. And this is why, if Kuminga does come back, I would like Steve Kerr to give him a runway of a significant role, significant playing time, and just seeing what happens. Because I still think we've got 4 years through this, and we haven't seen a 15 to 20 game period of Kuminga playing at least 28, 30 minutes a game. We just have not seen that. And if you bring him back on a significant contract, then I think you almost have to do that. You almost have to provide him that opportunity. And if you look at the numbers last season, Kuminga only played 6 games last season with more than 30 minutes. But when he did, he averaged 26.5 points, 8.3 rebounds, and 2.5 assists on 50% shooting from the floor and 35% from three-point range. The year before that, he played a much bigger sample size of 30-plus minutes, and he averaged about 21 points a game and shot 40% from three. So not only does the raw numbers go up in terms of the points, rebounds, assists, obviously, as they would when you get more playing time, but the shooting numbers go through the roof as well. Like, the efficiency goes through the roof. And so that's why, if you're Kuminga, you'd be telling prospective teams, hey, if you give me this role, this is what I can do for you. I can become a star. And that's why he still believes in himself as a multi-time All-Star in this league. And looking at those numbers, it's hard to argue against that, right? Like, they are kind of All-Star level numbers. When the guy averages 30 plus minutes a game, he puts up nearly 27 points on pretty good shooting efficiency. So that, to me, is why if Kuminga does come back, like, you need to give him this runway. And we've been saying it for 4 years, and some fans are getting sick of it, I know, but the numbers are there in plain sight for you to see. Like, this guy does put up numbers. Do they contribute to winning? I still think that's pretty questionable. I know a lot of fans would say, when I bring up, okay, well, he averaged 25 points on 55% shooting against the Timberwolves in the last 4 games, and the immediate answer to that is, well, did the Warriors win any of those games? Well, no, but my answer would be, well, that's got nothing to do with Kuminga. That had to do with basically everyone else. It had to do some part with Jimmy, who was not healthy and therefore was nowhere near his best. So I don't know. Can Kuminga, the numbers are there. Can that contribute to winning? We got to find out. And if you're going to bring him back on a $20 million per year contract, you better find out, because you could get away with it. Like, Steve Kerr could get away with, pulling the guy at different points and having, giving him an inconsistent role and playing opportunity when he's a first to fourth year player on a rookie contract who's making $6, $7, $8 million. Like, you can't do that with a guy making $20 million. He needs to be a key part of your team. So let's see it. Right, let's see it. Just a couple of more points that I want to finish up here. First of all, I just wanted to address this LeBron stuff, because there's been the talks of, LeBron and his future with the Lakers, and obviously, I think Scoop B Robinson or whatever said that 4 teams, being the Warriors among them, have expressed interest in trading for LeBron after he opted into his $52.6 million player option or whatever else. I just want to stake my flag to the ground here before anything potentially happens. And I'm not saying it will happen. I'm just saying, in the unlikely scenario that it does, I want to put, and this is probably going to be one of my biggest controversial takes in recent times. I would trade Jimmy Butler for LeBron James. I would. I've said it. There you go. Let me know. I would trade Jimmy Butler for LeBron James. I think LeBron is better. I think that his fit with the Warriors would be just as good as what we saw with Jimmy over the last few months of the season. I think he's a better scorer. Well, he just is a better scorer. I think he's a better shooter than Jimmy Butler, which I think with the Warriors could be pretty important, right? More willing and a more efficient shooter than Jimmy, as much as we don't necessarily see LeBron's biggest strength as being his shooting, right? And I think the majority of Warriors, like, I know there'd be plenty of fans already that are just yelling at me, like, what are you talking about? Shut up. Like, I can see it already. But my response would be, like, the reason that you don't want LeBron James on the Warriors is because he's LeBron James and all his fans, and the fact that he's a massive rival of the Warriors over the past decade to dozen years, right? Like, I get that. But if you're just looking at it from a purely basketball, take the name LeBron James away and just say, look at these numbers from this guy compared to Jimmy Butler. Is LeBron James a better player than Jimmy Butler? And would he potentially make more impact to the Warriors than Jimmy Butler? Yes. Like, I just think he would. I think he's a better player. And so if you had the opportunity come August 6th, when Jimmy Butler is trade eligible, to move Jimmy Butler for LeBron James, I think you do that. Now, the Lakers are going to want some kind of draft capital. There was the report today that they don't want to take on money beyond next season, and therefore Jimmy Butler with 2 years remaining, perhaps the Lakers just aren't interested in that whatsoever. LeBron still has some kind of leverage in this a little bit, because he's got the no trade clause still. Look, if it's Jimmy Butler and a second round pick or whatever for LeBron James, like, if you're having to throw in multiple first round picks, then yeah, sure, I'm questioning it massively. But in terms of just swapping, like, would you just swap Jimmy Butler for LeBron James? Me, yes, I would. and I know a lot of you are going to be angry by that statement, and I'm sure some of you are going to let me know in the comments what your thoughts are and completely reject that idea. But I'm just putting it out there. If LeBron James is available and you can flip Jimmy Butler for him, I'm doing it. I'm doing it. And more so just because, like, I think you got to ask yourself, all right, would you rather make the second round of the playoffs without LeBron James, or would you rather win a championship with LeBron James? And at the end of the day, like, I'm a Warriors fan. Like, first and foremost, I'm a Warrior fan. I want the franchise to win another championship. And whatever it takes to do that, I'm up for, right? If you have an ability to make your team better and draw closer to a championship, I'm up for that. Regardless of who, like, I can't think of a star player out there if you can get them. It's like the Bradley Beal thing. Like, some fans are like really off Bradley Beal because of what we've seen in Phoenix the last couple of years. And I'm like, hang on, he's a 3-time All-Star who still put up efficient numbers last season. Yes, disastrous scenario in Phoenix, but he's also, that was on $52 million. If you can get the guy on less than $10 million, or even if it was more than that, and you opened up the mid-level exception and gave him 14.1, I'm down for that. Like, he's a good player. Like, he makes the team better, right? Like, you just got to look at some of these guys and take away some of the extracurricular stuff. And it's why the Warriors put up with Draymond, right? Like, again, you can look at all the stuff and the negative stuff with Draymond, and that's very valid. Don't get me wrong. But the guy helps the Warriors win. He has helped them win 4 NBA championships, right? And so, again, if you have the opportunity to flip Jimmy Butler for LeBron James, I'm doing it. The last thing I wanted to mention here, because Moses Moody had a recent interview with Monty Poole, which came out today, I think, and he spoke about his UCL injury in his thumb, which he's had surgery on immediately following Golden State's playoff exit. And he's spoken about how much of an impact that actually made on him over the last portion of the regular season and then into the playoffs. And it just had me thinking, I've seen plenty of iterations of Golden State Warriors projected starting lineups entering next season, and I don't think I've seen one with Moses Moody in it. Not one. And he kind of gets forgotten out of this scenario, but he started 31 straight games for the Warriors to end the regular season and then into the playoffs. And I just think if we really take the injury into account and we take the fact that you need more shooting around Jimmy and Dre, let's assume Jimmy's still here and not at the Lakers for LeBron. If you need more shooting around Jimmy and Dre, and you need point of attack defense, which Moody started to come into that role after the Wiggins for Butler trade, then why are we not talking about him as a potential starting player for the Warriors next season at the 2-guard spot, for example, where you could have Steph, Moody, Jimmy, Dre, and let's say Al Horford, right? Why are we not talking about that? Well, we're not talking about it because he was so horrific to end the season. Like, his shooting numbers fell off a cliff, and he was just, he basically became unplayable in the playoffs. But now we see and we hear a very obvious reason as to why. He spoke to Monty Poole and said, I could barely hold the ball. I had to shoot the ball with 4 fingers, right? Like, really, really impacted him. And you look at the numbers, and he said, I did it in a March 18 game against the Milwaukee Bucks. Okay, so I was like, okay, let me see the numbers before and after that game against the Bucks. Well, in the 14 games before his injury, his 14 straight starts before the injury on March 18. Moses Moody averaged 12.8 points and 3.3 rebounds on 49.2% shooting from the floor and 43.3% from three-point range on nearly 5 attempts per game. They are great numbers, right? And the Warriors at that point started to become a really good team, right? Because that coincided with Jimmy Butler's arrival and they started to take off. In the 13 games after the March 18 injury to finish the regular season, Moody averaged 9 points, 2.7 rebounds, 38.5% shooting from the floor, and 31.1% from three-point range. And then in the playoffs, 7.1 points, 35% shooting from the floor, 33.3% from beyond the arc. So those shooting numbers pre and post injury are staggeringly different. Like, the contrast in that is huge, and is the difference between a really good player, really valuable player, and a guy who just sucked. Like, he just sucked to end the regular season in the playoffs. But now we've got a real reason for that. I just wonder, like, if we can take the injury away, right, and just look at the numbers before the injury, which is, again, a 14-game sample size is pretty decent when you're in a starting role, getting consistent minutes, playing alongside a lineup with Jimmy, Dre, Pods was in there, and Steph, right? That was the five that Steve Kerr had settled on to end the season. And then Moody's form just fell off a cliff, right, because of the injury, and therefore he was removed from the starting lineup in the playoffs. But again, if you just look at that 14-game sample and a guy that's shooting 43.3% from three, and I'm not saying that he's going to be a 43.3% shooter moving forward when he's healthy, but even if you took some off that and say he's a 39 to 40% shooter and he's going to be one of your primary point of attack guys, well, to me, that's a guy that probably should be in consideration for a starting role. And so when we talk about the Warriors starting lineup entering next season, again, I don't see Moses Moody in any of these starting lineup projections whatsoever. But with this kind of injury revelation in terms of how much it actually impacted him, and clearly the numbers would suggest that, maybe we have to have the because I think we're having more of a conversation about whether Moody and his new contract, 3 years, 37.5, can actually be part of, could be a trade chip this offseason. I'm talking about, well, could you trade Moses Moody and picks for Kobe White or something like that? Maybe the conversation more needs to be what his role is entering next season and whether or not he could actually be a starter for Golden State. Obviously, that is certainly going to be dependent on what happens here over the remainder of free agency, which I'll be back once something happens. If there's anything major speculation in the meantime, I'll be back on that as well. The Warriors play Summer League again tomorrow, so looking forward to that one. Hopefully we can see some more strong performances, particularly from Alex Toohey, Will Richard, and Taron Armstrong. I'll finish it up there, guys. If you haven't subscribed to the YouTube channel already, that'd be greatly appreciated. You can follow me at POC252. That's POK252 on X/Twitter. Thanks to everyone for the ongoing support. And again, once the Warriors do something here, we'll probably jump into another live stream and I'll get more of your thoughts as well. Thanks again, guys.